It is a vast continent, and so we encompass Central Asia, which is also sometimes known as the Middle East. We have Southeast Asia, we have South Asia, and we have like East Asia. Okay, East Asians would be China, Japan, like that kind of thing, and then South Asian would be India and so forth. Okay, I have spoken to people from the band's visit, and they prefer to be identified as Middle Eastern. So that's them. But if you happen to be Middle Eastern and you identify more as Asian, that's cool for you too. I'm totally open. Anybody can be Asian. Almost anybody can be Asian. Take it from this hoppa, almost anybody can be Asian. So right now I want to introduce the panel. I'm going to go ladies first. So this is Jaygee Macapugay. She was in School of Rock on Broadway, the original Broadway cast, and she has also been in this last year, Soft Power, which is the David Henry Wong new piece, and Wild Dreams at the both at the Public Theater.
Goose Dreams.
Wild Goose Dreams. I'm so sorry. Wild Goose Dreams at the Public, and those are two very exciting new pieces that have not yet made their Broadway transfer, but you know, fingers crossed. Orville Mendoza has been on Broadway in Pacific Overtures and Miss Saigon. I know, I'm trying to think, like, Orville's list is vast and long and encompassing. But we met playing Eskimos on a Thomas's English Muffin commercial. So
that's how fast
that's how far back. He had to sit on a block of ice in whale skin, seal skin
like
things.
100-degree live stream that.
I know, that's absolutely true. So,
adding that to the comments of YouTube.
yes, exactly. I'm sorry. I have to apologize to the Eskimos. And indigenous people. But most recently, Orville, and he was also in the original Broadway company of Peter and the Starcatcher. And most recently, he was doing the music of Huey Lewis out of California. And it's a new show called Heart of Rock and Roll, which also has hopes of a Broadway transfer. Yes? Yes. This is the man who, we went to college together. So I have actually known him the longest of anybody on the panel, but neither of us look it. Thank you for your case of character.
Asian don't raisin.
Right? Exactly. Age don't age, that's what I said. So this is Manu Narayan. It's supposed to be Manu. I have to get used to that.
I know, it's fine.
All right, okay.
You have, you know,
I know.
grandfathered in.
I pronounce it the Pittsburgh way.
Yeah.
Manu was the lead in Bombay Dreams, which I don't know if anybody realized, but that's like the first South Asian show musical on Broadway. Yeah, hopefully soon to be followed by Monsoon Wedding. It's only been 23 years. Yeah. And recently he was in the cast of My Fair Lady, and the original Broadway revival of My Fair Lady, and then he left that to create his own role in the original Broadway musical Getting the Band Back Together, which he also helped write. And now he is at the Roundabout in the revival of Merrily We Roll Along.
Sometimes Merrily.
Sometimes, yes, for the, I'm sorry, it is, you're right, it is Broadway pop. And then this is Kelvin Moon Loh, who was in the original Broadway company revival of Sideshow, played half man, half woman. He has since done many, many things, but most recently we have seen him lighting up Broadway last year in the featured role in SpongeBob SquarePants. And he now has a featured role also in Beetlejuice, which is opening on Broadway relatively soon at the Winter Garden. So what I enjoy, and my name is Erin Quill. I was in the original Broadway company of Avenue Q. And there's other stuff, of course, but this past summer I went to the Arena Stage in Washington, D.C. with Tina Landau, Nell Benjamin, and Tom Kitt, and we did the Broadway-bound production of Dave, the musical, and that is hopefully coming in fall 2019, if we ever work out this lab agreement, which is, it's bad, it's not good, it's not good. All right, so now we're gonna move on. I have a couple statistics. There are currently 41 Broadway theaters. Okay, and right at this moment, there are 30 Broadway productions, 22 of which are musicals. In the case of Choir Boy, it's a play with music, or in the case of Harry Potter, it's a play with magic. Last year, the shows that had Asian American Pacific Islanders featured performers and/or leads were SpongeBob SquarePants, Once on This Island, My Fair Lady, and Butterfly, Aladdin, Phantom of the Opera, School of Rock, Mean Girls, and Frozen, which is 9 shows out of 30. Those are actually the shows that had, and by the way, all these performers. Those were the shows that took the chance and made not always a lead role, but like a featured performer. For example, SpongeBob, that they had you and Stephanie Sue.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's 9 out of 30. Now that does not count the shows that have like one ensemble dancer who happens to be Asian. You know, those, so like the number is really, right now, the number is at 25, maybe, on Broadway. And that number hasn't really changed. Actually, that's an improvement. When M. Butterfly closed, it went way down. And when Once on This Island closed, we went way down. And when your numbers are small, any show closing that doesn't feature Asian performers, that's a big deal. I mean, maybe you don't realize, but Merle Dandridge, who was in Once on This Island, is actually Hapa. So it was her, it was Lea Salonga, was one of the little girls. And once that closed, there were like 3 gone. So that's kind of a big deal. Usually there's a couple of, and Aladdin wins, because Aladdin currently has 6 Asian American Pacific Islanders, but Telly is scheduled to leave in February, so then again, that number goes to 5. I don't believe they're replacing him. They're replacing him with an Australian performer who I'm not entirely familiar with, so I don't want to cite him necessarily, his ethnicity, because I don't know. However, when you add ensemble dancers, then you must acknowledge the Prom and Hamilton. And speaking of Hamilton, there is going to be an Asian American Alexander Hamilton beginning in late January. And I'm not entirely sure I'm allowed to say his name. And you know, I don't want Lin-Manuel mad at me, so I'm gonna say his name. But
He's already in the program.
he's already in the program, but he's not like, he's gonna be more of a regular.
I'll say it.
All right.
It's Mark Dela Cruz.
All right, there you go.
I'm so excited.
Okay, it's fine. Well, your show is up, babe, so he can't touch you. Lin-Manuel, he's gonna leave you alone.
You ain't
Okay.
doing your job yet anyway.
Right? All right. And then we also want to do a shout out to Mean Girls, who has one of the more featured roles for Asian Americans that are right now on stage, right? Okay, so that's Ashley Park. So all of our panelists have been involved in new work, so that's actually where we've been. And that number hasn't really increased, particularly. I don't know whether the learning curve is that it falls more on the creatives or more on the casting directors right now, because I feel like we all do get called in for many things, but ultimately where the weight of the decision falls, it would be the creatives. Yeah, I guess it's the creatives. So screw you creatives. All right, so anyway, all of our panelists have been involved in new work on Broadway and off SpongeBob School of Rock, Getting the Band Back Together, Peter and the Starcatcher, in which their background was present because you as an audience member could observe it, but not particularly discussed. So I just want everybody to go down the list and just say, so like they were in the show and they happened to be Asian, but it wasn't like a show about, hey, you have to be in it because you are Asian. Do you know what I mean? They were just a character and they happened to be Asian, just like, you know, some guy over there happens to be blonde, just like somebody over there happens to be brunette. So can everybody talk about a little bit what that has meant to them? Because I think a lot of times for Asian performers, we do get lumped into this category. Like you go for a call and it's like 6 people that resemble you kind of, you know, and that can be very disheartening.
Yeah, I mean, it was a dream come true to be cast in School of Rock because I came in and gave a good audition. And the thing about the casting for School of Rock, they were the kids that played instruments. So it started from there, right? And not only did you need to find kids that were great singers and actors, but also could play instruments. And so it really came down to the talent, like who had the talent. So, and then they accordingly cast it. And then they worked out for the adults who were basically the adult ensembles, like the supporting cast for the kids. And I loved it because it was truly based on who I am and like what I brought to the table. And that's a dream come true, because when you hear about casting like, oh, who's the token person of color in there, it diminishes you as an actor because it doesn't feel like it's based on like what you brought to the table. So that was wonderful. However, when it comes to casting, I do like the idea of revolving around ethnicity, because why not cast based on the world that is around you, that represents the world around you. So from those 2 points of view, being cast on your talent, yes, but also for casting to make, and our creatives to make an active role to want to cast people of color and let that be there when they're thinking about it. So.
Orville?
So like, I have worked with every single person up on this panel in one form or another, either concerts, workshops, or productions. But actually, you know, in my career, mostly I'm the token Asian in an all-white cast, or you know, or a mixed cast. And when you are that, you don't really think about your ethnicity, right? Because you're kind of accepted into the fold, and it comes as a huge shock when you're out in the when you're back auditioning and you're being told, oh, you can only go in for X, Y, and Z because of, you know, this. But also going back to something that Erin said about casting, I think all of us have been submitted as the ethnic alternative. Like, you know, if you want to see an ethnic, like, and especially for those of us who are character guys, like, you know, I've been, like, whatever Broadway show that's out there, I've probably been in for it as the ethnic alternative, like, you know, Hello Dog and stuff like that.
We should write a show called The Ethnic Alternative.
Totally.
We could all be in it.
The painful thing, well, I mean, you know, it's part of the job, but you have to treat that audition like you're gonna get it. And you have to, you know, find it within yourself to give 100%, even though, like, in the back of your head, it's like, I'm not really gonna get this, I know that, I'm just being presented. But, you know, thank goodness for some of the casting, like, you know, Telsey and Tara, who are, I think, huge champions of mine, and I thank them so much, because I do get called in so very often, you know, for, if we're looking for another guy, you know, look at Orville. So, but I think the point is, it's wonderful when you don't have to think about it.
Right.
And that's, you know, like how you were asking, how do you feel about when you're playing something that's not necessarily your ethnicity, right? Yeah, it's wonderful when you don't have to think about it, and you're just playing a human being, and you just happen to look like this.
Because I kind of think that's what humanity is. It's like we're all human beings, and we all kind of look the way we look, and then we all get along, you know, hopefully. And I do feel that it is behooving upon casting and creatives to wake up and realize that they see people of color every day, right? They see people of color, they see trans people, they see gay people, they see, you know, love is love in all different forms, whether it's mixed couples or whatever. And, you know, they can go to their doctor, their lawyer, their postman, but then when it comes to casting, they're like, oh, it's a white world.
Yeah.
And it's like not even just a white world, it's like a blindingly white world. It's shocking sometimes to realize what they see when they don't see us.
I do think there's a little bit of a responsibility towards the performers as well. You know,
Yeah.
like, listen, there's creatives and there's casting, and I know that because of the good work that a lot of, you know, Asian American and people of color have tried to say, listen, we need more opportunities, and they're trying to open it up a little bit more. And there's still a lot of work to be done. I'm not going to try to erase that whatsoever. But I do think that there is a responsibility towards the performer as an individual to say, listen, this is what makes me different. This is what makes me stand apart. And I need to find opportunities that are going to suit that, and I need to open myself up to more. I think there is something to be said to you as a performer going up to these creatives and saying, this is my opportunity. You may not see that, you may not think you're looking for me. I'm what you don't even know you're looking for. You know what I mean? And so sometimes going to a role, or we've been at that call together, you know, the ethnic alternative. I'm obsessed.
We have to get t-shirts.
But we've been there before.
We should totally get t-shirts.
But sometimes I feel like I
Hashtag
count
t-shirts.
myself out, you know, like I'm just like, oh, it's not for me. Like, this is just so that they have their bases covered, that they saw ethnic people. And sometimes I find myself limiting myself and saying like, oh, I'll never be able to do that, or they won't even bother.
And I think that that's something that, if we zoom out a bit, every performer, white, black, character person, leading woman, man, whatever person, every actor goes through that, the self-limiting before an audition. And you're right, Kelvin, I mean, I think that that's one of the things that we have to guard against, just generally. Even if we're right for the role ethnically, we have to guard against that.
Do you remember calling me when you were going to audition for Miss Saigon and asking me
Yeah,
if it was okay that you went in for Tui? And I was like, well, Asian is
No, I
Asian.
didn't. I didn't even go in for Tui. I went in for John or
Oh,
Chris, and
okay.
it was the black and white call, basically. But then I ended up on tour with this guy for 4 years.
Yeah.
I think if you go upstream a bit, one of the problems that we all face as performers, whether we're Asian, whether we're not Asian, is that the person who's written the show has written the show with a specific type in mind, and their guild protects their right to cast it the way they want. So when you come downstream a little bit from that, whether that's the producers who are producing it, whether that's the casting directors who are casting it, there are directives. Edward Albee is a great playwright to point to, because for many, many years, and I think it's still the case today, you cannot cast a person of color in his plays because he deemed that that's not what he wants. That doesn't reflect the plays that he's written. Until that starts to change, until we start changing that upstream with the Dramatists Guild or whatever that group is, we'll be fighting the fight of being seen and hopefully having open-minded people downstream who cast us. But I truly believe up there is where we need to fight the fight.
You know, going back to, some of us know there's a good friend of ours who's a professor at NYU, Robert Lee.
Yes.
And he is a composer, and he's amazing. And we had this long discussion a long time ago. He's like, we have to stop. We have to stop trying to crash everyone else's party, and we have to start making our own. And that's the way you can identify who is coming in on that guest list, you know? And it's something that is starting to happen.
I think it's starting to happen.
But not very fast. How many?
No, Young
playwrights-
Jean Lee is the first woman of Asian background to get a play up on Broadway, and that was just this year. And guess what her play was called? Straight White Men. So we weren't in it. We weren't in it. I defend her right to write for straight white people. You know, obviously they need a voice too. But you know, they're so underrepresented. But you know, that was her expressing her outrage in a different way. You know, and then the only male playwright that we've been able to have on Broadway is David Henry Wong, and he's been the game for like 25 years, right? So I'm looking to the younger playwrights that are coming up now that are being developed, both East Asian, South Asian, basically just Asian American, to link it like Lauren Yee and Leia Nakano. She's Winkler. I didn't want to get it wrong. And a couple of who are playwrights? Yeah,
And Ansel Jem, who wrote Wild Goose Dreams.
exactly. Like, who are you guys looking at? Who do you have your eye on?
Well, I mean, definitely, I worked with Hansel with Wild Goose Dreams at the Public this past December, and it was incredible because in the last couple of years, working with female directors and female lesbian writers, they've championed more, in my opinion, people of color and people who are like different more than any other directors that I've worked with, because women in particularly, I think you might be talking about that later on, they know what it's like to be other, so they champion others as
We're
well.
othered every day.
Yeah.
You know, Hansel is amazing, Lauren's amazing, Erin Makmat. But there are also those playwrights who have been around that haven't
Yes.
had a huge break, like
Absolutely.
Lloyd Se,
Mhm.
Queen Wen. So as far as making our own party, the party is there.
The party is there, the party
Yeah.
just needs money to buy everybody
We just
drinks.
need money.
I was like,
Roger
where are
Joseph
those,
was on
where are
Roger
those
Joseph.
real crazy rich Asians? Because
Yeah.
the truth be told is that's how that party gets funded. This party metaphor. I'm sorry I put it out there. But that is true too. You know, like it's not just on the level of putting people of color in playwright positions and in actor positions, but yes, in the creative positions. Yes,
And in the
also
producer
casting.
positions.
Yes, in the producers.
You know where I feel we can influence that is the boards of all the nonprofits have multinational companies with Asian leaders in those as CEOs, CFOs, COOs. And if we can somehow get into their ears saying that you're supporting these theater companies and with huge donations, but they're not representing neither your employees nor the people in New York City. So in order to get your money, can you stipulate that you have to produce more Asian playwrights, produce more people of color on stage in leadership positions? I wonder if that's some way we can influence that in a better way. You know,
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, I think there's.
Shall we start a coalition now?
Put Sony on the list.
Let's do it. The Hilton
Put
path.
Sony on the list. Okay, so do you think we're looking at a turning point on Broadway? We have really 9, 10 people who have been featured as leads and supporting in the last year. Do you think it's changing, or do you think that was like a slightly better year than the year before, and now those plays are closed, and now it's going to go back to we're going to be up here next year like, so the number's 0.
I think it's hard to quantify it, and I think it's hard to qualify it in both terms, just because, is it a turning point? Who knows? For example, we did The King and I 2 or 3 years ago at the
Yeah.
Spine Lincoln Center, and suddenly we're like, if you look at the numbers, you're like, wow, there are almost 100 Asian people represented on Broadway.
Because it was King and I, Allegiance,
Right.
and Saigon.
And the day
So it was like,
close, and you're like, wow, there are 2 Asian people left on Broadway, and that happened. So, but here's what I think is really exciting. I think that shows like Hamilton, which I'm obsessed with. I'm sorry, Lynn, call me. Shows like that are constantly now putting stars and people of color at the top and leading roles. They suddenly become, their names become recognizable. Okay?
Right.
They become a standard that like, oh, I know that actor from Hamilton. He's famous to me. And now that person becomes more desirable to casting. And so I think that we can't really fully see the scope of what exactly is happening 20 years down the line. I do think it's exciting that there are more roles for people for them to step up and give them a chance to become stars. I think sometimes we do these Asian shows as well. We did Here Lies Love together, and then the same thing with King and I, but it made a star of Ashley Park. It made a star of Ruthie Ann Miles really fast. It makes a star of anybody who's a part of those things. And so once those names become recognizable, then they get an opportunity to do even more things, and then it opens up more opportunities for it gets audiences kind of
accustomed to seeing us.
and it also gets producers to
Exactly.
But it gets producers accustomed to seeing that. Oh, look, if I put an Asian lead in the head of a production of a Broadway show, it won't close right away. You know what I mean? So, but that is a confidence that they need, and I think that is happening. Maybe not at a pace that I fully love, but I do think it's happening.
Yeah, I
Well,
think we're at a glacial pace.
What do you think about how activism has increased the visibility of Asian Americans, like starting from television, trickling down into theater, and television to film. Like a few years ago, there was the hashtag starring John Cho. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And there was people were wanting to see more Asians in leading roles, and on the social media, being able to blast that out and show that. I wonder if it's trickled down more for us on Broadway in the theater and getting more visibility.
Well, I've been poking at the producers now for 6 years with the blog. And I have seen change. Like, absolutely, there's change, because my blog is political. You know, I don't write every week. I don't write unless there's something to write about to kind of bring attention to it. So I have noted, so there have been some shows that closed, and there have been repercussions, like for me personally, but I'll take it because that's my community service. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'll take it. I didn't get called, like once the blog started and kind of I called out Moises Kaufman and stuff, I didn't get any calls for about 2.5 years. Nothing. And it wasn't until, and I'll be honest, I'll name him. Jordan Roth came to the first panel, one of the first panels I did here at BroadwayCon the first year, and he looked at me and he said, I listened to what you said, I agree with everything you said, and that was all he said to me. And then all of a sudden it kind of like there was like a twinkle in the universe and I started getting calls again. I've never worked for him, so I don't know that that's a thing, but I do think you have to speak truth to power. And if you don't speak truth to power, then you're just accepting the status quo. And the one thing I will not do, because now I became a mother 6 years ago, that was when the blog started, I want the world to be different for him. And I wrote it when I was at a 4 a.m. feeding and I saw that The Nightingale in La Jolla had been cast, and I looked at the cast because Ray Lee had mentioned to me, oh yeah, I can't even get an audition for that, and that's when I was like, oh, I wonder who's in, what, who is in this? And they're, it's set in China and there's no Chinese people. That was when, for me, it took off. And it was a combination of hormones, and it was 4 a.m. and everything else, and just like all the rage that I had felt. And it was rage, because when you're an Asian performer, it's very easy to tap into that. Just like when you're any minority, underrepresented person, if you don't see yourself on a daily basis, or even on a monthly basis, represented, it has a psychological effect. And I looked at this child that was sleeping in my arms, who I thought was just so perfect and wonderful, and I was like, I don't want him to feel this way. Because the difference for me was also that my mother had been a performer. My mom was an advanced teacher in the Royal Ballet System, and she was the youngest to ever get it. And she just couldn't get work, right? And my grandmother was a concert pianist. And she gave up performing, other than her town in Australia, because of these same issues. So for me, I was like, it's 3 generations of not being seen, and that's enough. But I do think it's had an effect.
Oh, and I'm positive it's had an effect.
Yeah.
There is amount of pressure. Social media is real. Our voices are real. They can be heard. And if it was just one voice to win, it wouldn't make a difference. But you do hear a cry from inside the community saying, we want more, and not always just a rageful way, which is
no, that's just my way.
It's
just me. I'm just rageful.
But and just to speak to your point, Jaygee, is there a trickle down from movies? Absolutely. It is not